Welcome back to the Mobalytics 9.14 Update and Q&A video. I'm your challenger coach, Adam Moriarty-Isles, here to take you through all the changes and questions you had. As a disclaimer, I'd like to mention that we only update the normal list as of right now, as the high-low one wouldn't really have a big enough dataset to make an update worthwhile at this point in time. Now with that out of the way, let's jump right into the update. 9.14 will be a notorious patch due to how many bugs it had, but also because it had a lot of hotfixes. Lux can no longer abuse her passive due to instant proc electrocute, Rise can actually buffer his spells now, Akali R now travels at the proper speed instead of in slow motion, and 2 days later, they would give her extra base stats to help her laning. Thomas Kenchington, as I will call him now, got some very large buffs to his QCD and slow along with his passive damage, making him not as terrible and maybe B tier in top lane. Galio received a pointless buff to his Q mana cost and passive damage because he's still terrible, and Cassio got her E healing nerfed and WCD increased at later ranks as she was potentially overbuffed. And lastly, we have Fizz, who was definitely overbuffed, so they nerfed his passive, then 1 day later realized it was an over nerf and gave it back to him. First up, we have top lane. Going to try a new format here, so let me know what you think in the comment section. Let's start off with what predictions we got correct. Renekton was predicted by many to be broken with the shield breaker mechanic. Turns out his win rate barely changed despite the massive perceived buff. This is because the amount of situations where Renekton can actually break a shield when it matters is far less than what you would actually think, making it so that we didn't actually move him on the list. Tryndamere, which was my pick of the patch, was also able to maintain his win rate, keeping his A tier status, so +1 for me, and Nico, Singed, Poppy also maintained their positions post changes. TK was sent to the dumpster with a 43% win rate initially after the patch, but dragged back out by Riot with the hotfixes, so he is now placed in B tier tentatively, because who knows what might happen, he might get hotfixed again, it's 9.14. As for stuff we got wrong, Mordekaiser took a much harder hit in top lane than expected. Seems like he's just a stat check champion, so he can either run at you and you die, or you run at him and he dies. Kinda like Darius, to be honest. He can't really do much outside of that. This isn't to say that Mordekaiser is bad, he's definitely A tier, it's just that he'll actually lose fights if he misses abilities instead of having his passive and free magic pen kill someone for him. He is also dead in the jungle, so please stop trying it. Admiral Clegg got an absurdly strong buff with his 60% healing reduction for 5 seconds if his Q pulls the person. This means that he can pretty much keep the debuff up the whole time later in the game. With the massive amount of healing in the meta, this allows Kled to more easily secure 1v1 kills in lane versus specific matchups like Mundo or even Renekton, but also dive the backline without having a Sona or Yuumi use Lay on Hands and heal the carry to full with an instant cast spell. This is what allowed Kled to hit S tier. Wrapping up the rest of the list, the Kennen nerfs to his early lane pressure were too much to maintain A tier, dropping him to B, while Malphite and Swain both got many reworks intended to help them in top lane, but actually ended up being nerfed, so they dropped from A to B tier. Fun fact of the day, Swain's best role stat-wise is actually support, with a decent enough sample size for it to matter. Makes you really wonder about some of these reworks lately. Moving on over to the jungle list this time for sure, Flares' pick of the patch Trundle was able to maintain A tier due to how strong he is versus popular meta picks like Nunu. Legit no counterplay in that matchup, Trundle just runs him over. As for potential jungle picks that could have ended up on the normal list due to their changes, such as Nidalee, Tahm Kench, or Sylas, we were correct in not adding them to B tier as they have god-awful win rates. Not that they mean everything, but on the normal list, if you're that bad, there's no way we can recommend that garbage. Looking to Sejuani, she was properly placed in B tier as she does terrible into a lot of the S tier picks as well as A tier ones like Trundle. This makes Kayn the only change we are making to the jungle list by moving him from A to B tier. Despite being one of the most popular junglers in the game due to how edgy, anime, and fun he is, Kayn is actually not that strong. This meta revolves around early impact from junglers, which Kayn just can't provide until 10 minutes, and by then your top laner is probably AFK. His scaling is quite strong, but with the recently buffed Katarina and Kled being more meta, even his red form can get run over. Time for the mid lane tier list update. Pekkin's pick of the patch Lux, despite her nerfs, was able to maintain S tier as she was given compensation buffs for mid lane rather than support. Diana was nerfed quite a lot last patch, which was deserved as she was literally broken. But these nerfs were not as harsh as expected, as her Q is still moving fast enough that it's not dodgeable, making her jump from B to A tier. As for Swain, he is going to move from the graveyard to B tier, and if you're a little confused about this one, don't worry, stay tuned for the Q&A portion where I answer this question in depth. Fizz takes Mordekaiser's place in S tier after he received a large buff to his survivability and Mordekaiser lost a lot of his damage. This has to be one of the weirdest buffs because I don't think I've ever heard someone complain about Fizz being too hard to live on. In fact, it's the opposite. People, well, ADC mains, complain he just one-shots them with no counterplay. Since we're talking about lack of counterplay, due to how tanky he is now, Fizz almost has no hard losing matchups, causing his win rate to skyrocket by 2%, easily allowing him to enter S tier. Alright, now with that rant over, if you're interested in other champions that were changed like Akali and Sylas, they're not terrible, but still only useful if you're extremely good at them. Ahri is still S tier in the normal list, but is doing way better in high elo with the anti-dash on her charm, so maybe we can see her in competitive play soon. The Space Dog Aurelion Sol is playable again and strong if you one-trick him, while Cassio is A tier on release, but post-hotfix nerf she is B tier as predicted. Oh, before I forget, Ryze is still bad and Galio is god-awful and was removed from the list altogether. Once again, intended buffs ended up destroying a champion who was supposed to move from support to a solo lane, but instead moved to being unplayable until he is fixed. And now for the bot lane tier list update. Caitlyn is a champion we should have predicted to fall down due to her best laning partners Lux and Karma being a lot worse. We are now moving her down to A tier as she is no longer as OP with the rest of the S tier roster. Taking her place in S tier for now is Jhin. For your information, he is one of my favorite marksmen to play and thematically. The buff to his W really helped him secure more kills early game, allowing him to snowball more easily. This type of buff might seem small, but as a general rule, a buff to CC duration almost always increases that champion's win rate by a lot. This is because it normally allows you and your teammates to get 1 or 2 extra attacks up, helping you more easily secure kills or chain CC. Ezreal is moving down to B tier because as enchanters get more popular, his ability to impact teamfights compared to late game scaling crit ADCs like Jinx is awful. Give me Jinx Janna over Ezreal with any support any day. He's performing poorly enough on this patch, he might be dodge worthy in lower elo. Yasuo will be taking his place in A tier, and I'll go more in depth as to why this happened during the Q&A portion, but for now, he does happen to have a very nice duo combo with AP Gragas support, so try this wombo combo out if you want to play aggro and lane. And now we got the support tier list update. One of the only champions we did not correctly predict was Blitzcrank moving from A to S tier. Seems like Enchanter players got used to not having to dodge his hooks, but now, thanks to the shield breaker buff, his ult can now easily kill them, even during the mid game. One of the biggest problems Blitz had was that if he and his team were not ahead during the mid game, he could hook people in and they just wouldn't die. But now, even if he's behind, he can kill enchanters or their teammates, which is one of the main reasons his win rate went so high. As for correct predictions, Lux got murdered, we all saw that one coming. Pyke though, the buffs were enough to make him maintain A tier and is closing in on S tier due to just how much gold that guy is getting. I'm thinking him and Draven should rename to the money lane from now on, Robin Gold and Stealin' LP. Leona, Karma, and Alistar all got mediocre buffs and remained mediocre in B tier, easiest prediction of my life, just saying. Starting off our Q&A portion, we have AA on YouTube who asks, Corki and Quinn maybe deserve B tier in ADC, at least if Yasuo is on your list, lol. I'ma be blunt on this one. They don't, and it's for 2 reasons. The first being that we limit the tier list to champions above 1% play rate, with some exceptions of course, like Zilean, cause everyone hates playing him including me, but he's damn good. This is done to make sure we suggest champions that have enough data and are popular enough to be worth investing into. Quinn and Corki combined don't reach 1% play rate, let alone Yasuo who has 1.5%, which is higher than Kog'Maw and tied with Kalista. Now for the second reason, it's because they both have lower than 50% win rate as niche picks. So even though this data is from 9.14 and the sample size is going to be really low, other niche bot laners who are actually strong, such as Sona, Taliyah, Vel'Koz, Veigar, Swain, Ziggs to name a few, has similar play rates, but also have 51 to 54% win rates on 9.14 and roughly similar play rates and win rates on 9.13. Hit him with the MOBA math in the comments, lads. Numbers never lie, only the people reading them do. Hopefully that helped answer your question. Our second question comes from Cazador de Yordles on YouTube who asks, can someone explain to me the Nidalee Runic Echoes Triforce hybrid build? I've never seen this and I want to know. Alright, I got you. This build I found out about when playing with Spica, one of the best solo queue junglers on NA, who plays quite a bit of Nidalee. For runes, he mostly goes Conqueror with Inspiration Secondary for free boots. Item path-wise, he goes Chilling Smite, Runic Echoes, Triforce, Tier 2 boots, Zhonya's as his core. He then follows it up with Athene's or Liandry's, but at that point, any AP item or tank item is pretty usable. This build is meant to be more scrappy and early pressure oriented around skirmishes and high tempo gameplay. Honestly sounds like a perfect dream for Mike Young. Side note though, this build is used in China as well as NA occasionally, but is not as popular as the AP one, and in recent games even Spica no longer uses this build. Personally, I would use it as an option versus heavy frontline comps, kind of like how Ashe has her Triforce versus range comps and Borg versus melee comps. Now, before I move on to the next question, I would like to legally protect myself with a disclaimer, as I take no responsibility for any lost elo when using this build, or if anyone on your team uses this build and you lose because of them. Our next question comes from Kaios on Discord, who asks, why is Xayah A tier in low elo, but S tier in high elo? This happened because the high elo meta suits Xayah extremely well. Not only is her favorite lane partner Rakan a highly contested pick, but in the high elo meta at the moment it's very dive heavy, which is perfect for a champion like Xayah, who is amazing at kiting back and self-peeling. Not to insinuate that these things are not valuable at a lower level to play, hence her A tier placement. It's mostly due to her range issues and less mechanical proficiency. She can run into positioning mistakes often during teamfights at lower levels of play, which is why she is not S tier. I've seen way too many Xayah players in my day die without hitting R then blame lag for me to believe that her skill ceiling is low. To back up this trend, on patch 9.13, Xayah's win rate on all ranks, then Plat Plus, then Diamond Plus sees a steady increase only to jump massively at Masters Plus, showing how she does better the higher you go. This trend also exists on 9.14, but just to a lesser extent and with less data. Our fourth question comes from Alexander Barth on Facebook, who asks, so why is Singed suddenly an S tier again? I'd really like to know, as I'm a Singed main. It mostly comes down to favorable matchups coming back into the meta and his new Conqueror build. Outside of Conqueror, you're going to be looking for Resolve secondary with Demolish and Bone Plating. Build-wise, it's full AP, none of that lame tank Singed. Rallies, Leandries, Proto Belt, Sork Boots, Mercs or Tabis, doesn't matter. After that, you'll most commonly go Zhonya's, but you can also pick up tank items if you really want to. As for where this setup came from, it was not invented by Lehens, the support for Griffin, but he did popularize it on the Korean Challenger ladder and condone it on 9.14. As for his matchups, he has winning matchups into Riven, Jax, Mordekaiser, Renekton, Aatrox, Yasuo, Aurelia, Kled, Malphite, Vlad, Camille, Akali, Poppy, just to name a few. He will be seeing a lot of play this patch, or at least increased play this patch. Though the sample size for matchup data on 9.14 is small, it's enough when you combine it with the 9.13 data to notice a trend of winning popular matchups for Singed, which is why we got the Poison Surfer to A tier. And our last question is from Instagram by someone who I can't pronounce his name, so I'm gonna call him Slim, who asks, why is Swain not viable in mid lane? So for this one, I had originally thought that due to his decreased range and less mana sustain, he would not be as suited for mid lane compared to top lane, because in mid lane, many more long range zone style champions like Anivia or Vel'Koz exist. And I'll admit, I was wrong on that one, because he is currently performing better in mid lane compared to top lane. After I found this out, I did some research into his matchup data and found that he does in fact lose to zone control mages. It's just that they are far less popular compared to mid lane matchups such as TF for example, or assassins like LeBlanc or Diana. He is a great counterpick to assassins who are popular at the moment, such as Akali or again Diana. Just don't go against Katarina. With that increased healing on her ultimate, she will destroy you. Thanks for watching our tier list update and Q&A video for patch 9.14. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, or go to our Discord server in the link provided, where you can ping me in our Discord discussion channel. Don't forget to try out Mobalytics today at mobalytics.gg, and I'll see you summoners out on the Rift.